Today we are going on a short tour of the 26-acre Forest River Conservation Property in Marblehead, one of 8 such properties owned by the town. The entrance on Old Salem Road is one of 4 marked entrances to the property, 2 along Route 114 and 1 on Leggs Hill Road. We don't have to go very far along this path to find a number of side trails. 2 of these lead directly to other entrances, the rest are for exploring. The path begins with a little rise from Old Salem Road that is a clue to the major change that occurred some 70 years ago. Although narrow in appearance today, this was an access road for trucks around the middle of the 20th century. Why trucks? Well, nearly all of what is now Forest River Conservation Area was heavily mined for gravel from about 1947 through 1953. Gravel was here in great quantities because it was left behind when glaciers, which once covered this area, melted back in retreat more than 10,000 years ago. Once discovered in modern times, the gravel was exposed by removing the topsoil. It was then dug and trucked out to be used as fill. Runways of the present-day Logan Airport in Boston rest on this fill from the site. The topsoil of this area, however, was never replaced. None of the trees that you see here were 70 years ago. So this entire area is a study in nature recovering from an action of man. But let's move on so we can view some of nature's work. Let's go first to the junction of this trail with the one from Leggs Hill Road. The path from Old Salem Road meets the main trail coming from Leggs Hill Road just here at the edge of a salt marsh. The river seen across this salt marsh is the Forest River. Salem Harbor and the Atlantic Ocean are to the right and not far from here. When the tide rises, the land around the river is nearly flat, so the salty sea water will come up to the river and mix with fresh water coming from upstream on its way to the ocean. The grasses that grow here have some salt tolerance, unlike most other plants. In the 19th century, grasses would have been cut and saved to feed farm animals. Let's go a little farther along so that we can see other features of this area. This trail off the main trail is called the Inner Loop Trail. As the name implies, it is a loop that eventually curves back to the main trail. A short distance from this point, we will come across a small pond that was man-made, but not because anyone wanted a pond. This was most likely an attempt to measure the depth of gravel for possible further mining. Such mining would have been difficult as it was below the high tide level of the river. This pond was simply an area deep in gravel. Once gravel was removed, groundwater and runoff filled the hole. The spot may look innocent, but the hole is deep and ice cover in the winter may be rather weak. It is best to stay away. Let's keep walking. This trail going up a little rise is actually another loop. It circles around to rejoin the Inner Loop Trail, but it also connects with a smaller trail that goes out to the Route 114 upper entrance. The rise you see is a ridge of gravel left behind by a bulldozer as it worked the area. Not far over that ridge and along this outer loop is an excellent example of an unusual deciduous tree. Like all deciduous trees, this one loses its leaves for the winter. What is unusual is that the tree is a conifer. This tamarack, or American larch tree, looks like a dead evergreen in the winter, but it will blossom and fill with needles in the spring. There are a few of these northern conifers in Marblehead, this being the southernmost edge of their native area. This one is fairly tall, though they can grow much taller. Just behind this tree is a connecting trail that climbs to higher ground and one of the better viewing sites of the area. Let's go there. This high ground is a wonderful viewing area, but it also speaks to what is going on with this disturbed land. The underlying material throughout this entire area is all glacial sediment. It is dry, coarse, and virtually free of organic matter. After mining stopped, plant seeds were brought into the area by animals, birds, and wind. In the earliest stage of recovery, seeds had the only nutrient-poor sediment as a growing medium. And the coarseness of this material meant that it drained away water quickly. Nature, however, is persistent. Organic material is slowly moving over the exposed gravel. As it decays, new topsoil forms, allowing other plants to take root. So the grasses, flowers, bushes, and small trees around us are early species in a natural land recovery process. The process is slow. What you see here is about 70 years of recovery. Grasses and sumac trees are 2 of the species that take root in the early recovery process. Eventually, some conifers arrive. Here on the high ground, we can also find crabapple trees, most likely from a long-gone farm. We have come off the high ground and are back down on the main trail. Regrowth is even more difficult here because enough gravel was removed to allow tides to flow into the area, forming tidal pools. At high tide, this portion of the trail is underwater, forcing hikers to higher ground for short times. However, there is plenty of time during the day to enjoy what is here. The tidal pool holds thousands of fingerling fish that are food for herons. This is also a mating area for horseshoe crabs in the spring. After midsummer, sea lavender is everywhere, giving color amid the grass. These large timber structures are old tidal gates that were once used to control tides coming in from Salem Harbor. They have been replaced with metal and concrete versions that can be closed in the event of an unusually high and threatening tide. From here, the main trail rises all the way to Route 114, to what is called the lower entrance on Lafayette Street. There is much to see in this lovely conservation area. We have only hit some of the highlights. With the river at one edge, and the overall area recovering from gravel stripping more than a half century ago, the area is unique and good for studying as well as quiet walking.